The orbital museum above Centauri Prime rotated slowly, its crystalline spires gleaming in the light of Alpha Centauri. Jeth Morova adjusted her breathing apparatus and tried not to look impressed. As a journalist for the Galactic Chronicles, maintaining objectivity was paramount, especially when interviewing someone as renowned as Varix Newham. "This way, please," chirped the museum's AI guide. "Curator Newham awaits in the Human Conflicts Wing." The massive doors parted silently, revealing a vast chamber filled with carefully preserved artifacts. Display cases housed everything from primitive metal weaponry to sophisticated combat exoskeletons. Holographic battles played out in miniature across strategic tables, showing key moments from humanity's numerous conflicts. In the center stood Varix Newham, his scaled hands carefully polishing what appeared to be an ancient helmet. Four multifaceted eyes glinted as he noticed her approach. "Ah, journalist Morova, welcome to my collection." His voice resonated with the distinctive harmonic overtones of the Selvic people. "I understand you're writing a piece on why the galactic community remains wary of humans despite our century of alliance." Jeth activated her recording drone. "That's correct, Curator. Your expertise on human military history is unparalleled. You fought against them in the Great Expansion conflict, then spent decades collecting and studying their martial artifacts." Varix placed the helmet in a preservation field. This belonged to a human sergeant named Rodriguez, found on Epsilon 9 after the Battle of Whispering Ridge. His upper eyes blinked in sequence. "Do you know why this simple helmet is displayed centrally among advanced weaponry?" Jeth examined it, scarred metal, primitive protection by galactic standards. "Because," Varix continued before she could answer, "it tells us everything about why humans terrified us. Look inside." Projected inside the helmet were childish drawings, preserved photographs of smiling humans, and handwritten notes. "This warrior carried his offspring's artwork and family memories into battle," Varix explained. "Tell me, in all your research, have you found another species that brings reminders of what they love into the heart of violence?" Jeth's four-fingered hand hovered over her notes. "That seems counterproductive. Wouldn't such emotional attachments impair combat efficiency?" Varix made the clicking sound that served as Selvic laughter. "That's precisely what our military theorists believed. We thought humans were irrational, sentimental creatures. We were devastatingly wrong." He gestured for her to follow him past displays of increasing technological sophistication. The unified galactic races entered the Great Expansion with superior technology, numerical advantage, and a logical approach to warfare refined through centuries of simulation. Varix paused before a holographic display showing a human flanking maneuver. "We expected rapid victory." "Yet the conflict lasted 7 years, Jeth noted. 7 years during which they continuously adapted," Varix corrected. "You see, most species approach warfare as either science or necessity. Humans approach it as art." Art? Jeth's antennae twitched with skepticism. "Consider, when we deployed energy shields calibrated to our weapons' frequencies, humans responded not with better energy weapons, but with kinetic projectiles, technology centuries obsolete by our standards. When we employed perfect geometric formations developed by our finest tactical AIs, they deliberately created chaotic, unpredictable patterns that our systems couldn't anticipate." Varix guided her to a display case containing what appeared to be primitive paper books. "These are what humans call field manuals, tactical guides for warfare. Note how dog-eared and annotated they are. Humans don't just follow instructions, they question, improvise, and improve constantly. Each human soldier is encouraged to think creatively about problems." Jeth's reporting instincts tingled, but surely centralized command is more efficient. "Efficiency isn't creativity," Varix countered. "When our communications were compromised at Proxima Centauri, our forces awaited new orders and were decimated. When human communications were compromised at Barnard's Star, each unit commander made independent decisions based on their understanding of the larger objective. They coordinated using visual signals they'd improvised during training." They walked past displays showing various human combat units, each with distinct insignia, traditions, and specialized equipment. "Look at this diversity. Most galactic forces strive for uniformity, optimization. Humans deliberately cultivate different martial traditions, knowing that diversity of approach creates adaptability." Jeth noticed something peculiar. These units, they're named after predatory animals. Sea lions, wolves, eagles. "Another uniquely human trait," Varix nodded. "They pattern their combat units after creatures they admire. They study how predators hunt, adapt those techniques. During the Battle of New Titan, their mountain lion units observed how our forces moved through rocky terrain, then employed stalking and ambush techniques that hadn't appeared in any of their military doctrines. They reached a section displaying communication devices. Varix activated one, and human voices filled the chamber singing. War songs, he explained. Humans sing before battle during marches in remembrance. They turn warfare into cultural expression. We intercepted these communications during the war and were baffled. Our analysts thought they were coded messages. Weren't they? In a way, but not as we understood coding. They were psychological tools, creating group cohesion, boosting morale, preparing minds for combat. Varix's voice dropped. Do you know what truly terrified our forces? The humans would sing while attacking, the psychological impact of an enemy who approaches battle with cultural expressions rather than grim necessity. It broke units who had never known fear. They continued past displays showing battlefield medicine, survival equipment, and improvised weapons. Humans don't just prepare for ideal conditions, they anticipate everything going wrong. Every soldier trained to be a medic, a technician, a survivor. When we stranded a human battalion on Frostmoor 7 expecting them to surrender or perish in the extreme cold, they built shelters from wreckage, repurposed vehicle parts into heaters, and lasted until rescue forces arrived 3 weeks later. They reached the final exhibit, a massive display showing the peace ceremony ending the Great Expansion conflict. After 7 years of fighting, after we had destroyed human colonies and they had decimated our fleets, look what happened, Varix said softly. The display showed human delegates offering terms that were remarkably generous, establishing the Centauri Accords that still governed galactic relations. They could have demanded more, why didn't they? Jeth asked. Because humans understand something fundamental about conflict that many species learn too late. The purpose of war isn't destruction, it's what comes after. They fought not to annihilate us but to establish the peace they wanted. Varix turned all 4 eyes toward her. You asked why the galaxy fears humans despite our alliance. We fear them not because they're cruel or aggressive, many species are both. We fear them because they're the only species that turned warfare into a versatile art form, complete with creativity, tradition, psychological insight, and most terrifyingly, restraint. Jeth considered this, yet they haven't engaged in major conflict for decades. Precisely, Varix nodded. The greatest warriors know when not to fight. Humans prepare constantly for war precisely so they can avoid it. They maintain their martial skills while building cultural bridges. They study our psychologies to understand how we think, not just how to defeat us. He gestured around the vast collection. This museum exists not to glorify human warfare, but to ensure we remember what they're capable of. Because the moment the galaxy forgets and threatens what humans value, their freedom, their allies, their principles, we will once again face the most creative, adaptive, and psychologically sophisticated warriors the stars have ever known. Jeth's drone captured Varix's final words. Humans aren't just fighters, they're artisans of conflict. And like all true artists, they understand both the beauty and terrible responsibility of their craft. The Galactic Council chambers on Harmonious Station hummed with nervous energy. Representatives from 17 species had gathered for an emergency session, their anxiety palpable despite the chamber's calming design. Ambassador Pelny observed them from her position near the illuminated speaking platform, noting the patterns of movement that betrayed their concerns. They're terrified, whispered in tow, her young Ilvari aide. His translucent skin pulsed with anxious blue patterns. News of the humans establishing a military outpost in the Vega corridor has them panicking. Pelny adjusted her ceremonial robes, the subtle weight of 30 years in diplomatic service evident in her deliberate movements. Her leathery skin, marked with the ceremonial scars of a senior Druathi diplomat, caught the chamber's soft light. Fear is to be expected, she replied calmly. Most of them have only encountered humans through historical records or entertainment broadcasts. They know the legends, not the reality. The council elder, a venerable Quarren whose crystalline exoskeleton reflected his 3 centuries of life, raised his appendages for silence. We have convened this emergency session to address concerns regarding human expansion into the Vega corridor. Ambassador Pelny, as our most experienced diplomat in human relations, we request your insights. Pelny moved to the platform with dignity, her 4 legs carrying her with the measured pace of her species. The chamber quieted, all eyes focusing on the diplomat who had negotiated with humans for 3 decades. Esteemed representatives, she began, her translator perfectly conveying the subtle harmonics of her native speech. I understand your concerns. The historical records of the Great Expansion conflict have left many with the impression that humans are a species to be feared, warriors without equal, tacticians beyond comprehension. A Xerillian representative interrupted, their bioluminescent patches flashing urgently. They have established a military installation in a strategic corridor without prior consultation. This matches their historical pattern before aggressive expansion. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Pelny raised a three-fingered hand. With respect, Representative, I believe you are operating from incomplete information. The installation in question is a joint defense platform established under Article 7 of the Centauri Accords, which all members present have signed. She gestured, and holographic documents materialized around the chamber. These are the full specifications and operational protocols of the Vega facility, transmitted by human diplomatic channels 12 standard cycles ago. They were acknowledged by this council's administrative AI. The Quarren elder examined the documents with compound eyes. These appear legitimate. Why were we not informed? An excellent question, Pelny replied. One that suggests administrative oversight rather than human deception. Had any representative requested information about human activities in the Vega sector, these documents would have been immediately provided. She moved to the center of the platform. This situation illustrates my first point about human diplomatic philosophy, transparency as strategy. The chamber's ambient lighting shifted to accommodate her presentation. Many species practice diplomacy as an extension of their natural communication patterns. The crystalline Quarren communicate with precise, structured exchanges. The bioluminescent Xerillians use light patterns that cannot deceive due to their physiological nature. Humans, however, evolved as social predators with the ability to conceal intentions. Amorican representative's quills bristled. You confirm our fears, they are natural deceivers. On the contrary, Pelny countered, humans have transformed this evolutionary capacity into its opposite through their diplomatic tradition. They practice radical transparency precisely because they understand deception's power. The Vega installation's complete specifications were shared preemptively without request. This isn't just cooperation, it's a strategic choice to build trust. She displayed historical records of early human-alien diplomatic exchanges. During initial contact with the Druathi, my people humans insisted on meeting in person despite communication risks. When asked why, their chief diplomat explained, because we need you to see our eyes when we make promises. They understood intuitively that species who cannot naturally deceive would require additional reassurance from those who can. The Xerillians' lights pulsed skeptically, yet they maintain the galaxy's largest military force while preaching peace. Which brings me to my second point, Pelny continued. Humans practice what they call peace through strength, not as contradiction but as complementary principles. She displayed records of human diplomatic initiatives alongside their military developments. Observe this pattern. Each major military advancement is paired with diplomatic outreach. When they developed improved FTL capabilities for their warships, they simultaneously established the Open Stars Initiative, offering the technology to any signatory of non-aggression pacts. When they created enhanced defensive systems for their colonies, they proposed the mutual protection framework that now safeguards 17 formerly vulnerable species. A Veskarian representative tilted their sensory crest. This seems paradoxical, developing weapons while pursuing peace. Humans embrace paradox, Pelny acknowledged. In their philosophical traditions, opposing concepts often exist in balance rather than conflict. They maintain military strength not primarily to wage war, but to ensure they can protect the peace they value. She paused, allowing her words to settle among the representatives. Consider this historical fact. Since the Centauri Accords, humans have deployed their military forces 37 times. How many of these were acts of aggression or expansion? The chamber remained silent. None, Pelny stated. 29 deployments were disaster relief operations where their rapid response capabilities saved countless lives. 6 were peacekeeping missions requested by this council. 2 were defensive actions against illegal mining operations threatening endangered stellar phenomena. She displayed footage of human ships delivering emergency supplies to planets devastated by natural disasters, medical teams treating alien species, engineers rebuilding critical infrastructure. Humans transformed their military into what they call a force multiplier for their diplomatic goals. Their warriors train not just for combat but for rescue operations, their ships designed not just to destroy but to deliver aid with unmatched speed. The Morican representatives' quills relaxed slightly, yet their history before contact was marked by continuous warfare among themselves. Which leads to my third point, Pelny nodded. Humans practice diplomacy informed by their fractured history. She displayed images from Earth's history, conflicts, peace treaties, international organizations. Humans developed diplomacy because they needed it desperately. They evolved not as a unified species, but as competing groups with different languages, beliefs, and interests. Their diplomatic traditions emerged from necessity, finding ways for different human cultures to coexist despite their differences. Pelny moved closer to the Council Elder. Most spacefaring species achieved planetary unity before developing interstellar travel. Humans did not. They brought their diversity, their disagreements, and most importantly, their methods for resolving those disagreements into the stars. She displayed the complex structure of human diplomatic corps, showing representatives from different Earth regions, ideological backgrounds, and cultural traditions. This internal diversity became their external strength. When negotiating with the methane-breathing Koltari, whose concept of time differs fundamentally from most oxygen breathers, humans sent diplomats from their Indonesian regions, whose cultural time concepts were most compatible. When addressing the hierarchical concerns of the Vespen hives, they deployed representatives from their historical monarchies. The chamber had grown quiet, representatives leaning forward with interest rather than tension. But most significant, Pelny continued, is how humans approach reconciliation after conflict. Their diplomatic corps includes specialists in post-conflict restoration, experts whose sole purpose is rebuilding relationships that war has damaged. She displayed footage from the aftermath of the Great Expansion conflict, human engineers helping rebuild alien worlds, cultural exchange programs, reparation agreements. After our forces retreated from Earth's colonies, leaving infrastructure destroyed and populations devastated, my predecessor expected demands for reparations that would cripple our economy for generations. Instead, human negotiators proposed the Mutual Reconstruction Initiative. They offered to rebuild our conflict-damaged stations if we would assist their devastated colonies. Pelny's voice softened. When asked why, their lead negotiator said something I've never forgotten, because someday we'll need to count on each other. She gestured to the concerned representatives. That is humanity's true diplomatic innovation. They view former adversaries not as defeated enemies but as future allies. They understand that today's peace creates tomorrow's possibilities. The Quarren Elder's crystalline form shifted in the subtle pattern indicating deep consideration. Your perspective is valuable, Ambassador, but practical concerns remain. How should this council respond to the Vega installation? Pelny smiled, the expression learned from decades working with humans. I recommend engagement rather than alarm. Request a tour of the facility. The humans will not only permit it, they'll welcome it enthusiastically. They'll invite your military analysts, answer technical questions, probably organize some ceremonial event with their distinctive food and cultural demonstrations. Several representatives chittered with surprised amusement. This isn't naivete on their part, Pelny clarified. It's strategic transparency. They understand that mystery breeds fear while familiarity builds trust, and trust, representatives, is humanity's most powerful diplomatic weapon. She prepared to conclude her address. We fear humans because history shows their unparalleled capacity for warfare, but we should respect them because that same history reveals their unmatched commitment to prevent it. They maintain their warriors' skills while directing that discipline toward disaster response, their tactical minds while applying that creativity to diplomatic solutions, their defensive technologies while sharing them with former adversaries. Pelny surveyed the chamber, nodding the shift from anxiety to contemplation among the representatives. The humans have a saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. What our historical records often miss is the corollary they practice. Having prepared for war, do everything possible to secure peace. Their diplomatic corps works tirelessly to ensure their warriors' skills remain theoretical rather than practiced. She stepped back from the platform. I've negotiated with humans through 30 years of crises, misunderstandings, and opportunities. I've seen their capacity for both resolute strength and surprising gentleness. The installation in the Vega corridor isn't a sign of aggressive expansion, it's an invitation to cooperative security. Whether we respond with fear or engagement will determine not their actions, but our shared future. The chamber remained silent as Ambassador Pelny returned to her position, her aide and toe watching with new understanding dawning in his luminescent patterns. The council elder's voice resonated through the chamber. We thank Ambassador Pelny for her insights. Perhaps we have been too quick to interpret human actions through the lens of their martial capacity rather than their diplomatic intentions. As discussions continued more calmly, Ento leaned toward Pelny. You've changed the mood of the entire chamber. Pelny watched the representatives with quiet satisfaction. I simply reminded them of something humans themselves taught me. True strength isn't found in winning conflicts, but in preventing them altogether. Outside the viewport, distant stars glittered against the void. each representing worlds where human diplomatic principles were not just practiced but continuously refined, not through dominance but through the patient, persistent art of mutual understanding.